from Canberra. Now, for more on the same-sex marriage story, we're joined by Reverend Dr. Margaret Mayman from Equal Voices, a Christian organisation that supports same-sex marriage, and Lyle Shelton, the Managing Director of the Australian Christian Lobby, which supports traditional marriage. Welcome to both of you. Margaret Mayman, we'll go to you first. How do you feel about the failure of the same-sex marriage supporters in the Liberal Party to get a clear change of policy yesterday?
Good morning, Joe. Well, we are really disappointed, along with the majority of Australians who support same-sex marriage law being affected. We think this is a delaying tactic, and that eventually there's going to have to be a free vote. And we look forward to the day when the views of Australian people, including the majority of Australian Christians, can be represented.
Lyle Shelton, how much work had you put in before yesterday to ensure the Liberal politicians stuck to that plebiscite plan?
Well, good morning, Joe, and good morning, Margaret. We've been campaigning very actively in this space. I want to thank the Liberal Party parliamentarians last night who stood up in their party room and showed resolve and stared down what was really four people in the House of Representatives threatening to take away the government's control on the floor of the House of Representatives to go against their solemn election promise. And I'm pleased that Liberal Party members, the parliamentary members, stood so strong and made their resolve very clear. And they've called the bluff of these people who have held the nation to ransom for the last week or so and hijacked all of our national politics at a time when the Prime Minister's trying to deal with terrorism, people trying to blow up A380 Airbuses, and these four men in the House of Representatives, by threatening to cross the floor, have had their bluff called by the resolve of their colleagues. And I would urge their colleagues to continue to show this resolve because it's continuing to restore integrity and trust amongst people who expect politicians to do what they say they will do.
And Margaret Mayman, so a postal plebiscite now seems like the most likely outcome because the plebiscite, presumably that's going to get knocked back in the Senate. How are you going to go up against the Conservative Christian lobby mobilising the numbers that it can?
Well, we're not a lobby organisation. We speak for the voices of grassroots Christians who are wanting to support their friends and families who would like to get, couples who would like to get married and celebrate that. So we'll just keep talking amongst our group and encouraging people to participate in public life, but also focusing ahead to the day when we can look forward to celebrating LGBTI families, couples, and making it possible to do what the majority of Australians, including Australian Christians, want us to be able to do.
So what do you say is the split in the Christian community about support and opposition of same-sex marriage?
From the polls, there's a consistent support over 50%, usually 55 to 65%, depending on which denomination's in favour of marriage equality. So that while church leaders and lobbyists such as the ACL are promoting a particular point of view, it's not representative of the majority of Christians who, because of our faith, value human dignity, want to celebrate love, want to strengthen families. We believe in marriage, and we believe that it's good for LGBTI families to be included in that. And we believe that this is a secular society, that this is about civil law. The change won't affect religious understandings of marriage. Churches have to work that out for themselves.
OK, Lyle Shelton, have you already got plans in place to mobilise your supporters for this postal vote that's very likely to happen?
Well, we'll wait and see, Joe. I mean, we're concerned about the postal plebiscite that's been put on the table. We haven't actually seen what has been put on the table, and already we're seeing people like Warren Entsch saying they have no intention of respecting the result. They're still threatening to cross the floor even if the Australian people vote in a postal plebiscite to retain the definition of marriage. I mean, I'll just say to Margaret, we as Christians obviously believe in human dignity. There is an orthodox view of marriage and family, and certainly the importance of protecting the rights of children to their mum and a dad. And I think if Margaret's convinced that there's a majority of Christians and a majority of Australians who support redefining marriage, then she should be doing her best to lobby the Senate crossbench this week, lobby Senator Entsch and Senator Xenophon and the Labor Party and the Greens, and encourage them to allow the plebiscite, the compulsory attendance at the ballot plebiscite that the government is wanting to get through the Senate, allow that to happen. And if these people are so confident they've got this overwhelming support, then they shouldn't be afraid for the Australian people to have their say.
So, Margaret Mayman, what has this debate demonstrated about Australian politics?
Well, unfortunately, we know that the nature of that debate is going to affect the lives of gay and lesbian people, families and children. And we are really concerned about children. We're concerned about children being raised by LGBTI parents. we're concerned about gay and transgender young people who are going to be in the midst of this debate about the very essence of their lives. We think it's unnecessary. We know that the politicians are going to vote according to their conscience, whatever happens. We should just move on and do that. So we'll definitely be opposing the plebiscite in all its forms and continuing to urge for a parliamentary vote, which has to happen in the end without the expense and without the pain that a plebiscite will cause.
And Lyle Shelton, it's reported this morning that you'll campaign against coalition MPs in the next election if there is a free vote. Why are you so opposed to a free vote in Parliament? Isn't that what it's there for?
Look, the Parliament or the government of the day has promised that all Australians will be allowed to have their say, and I think that's an expectation. The Parliament's actually dealt with the issue of same-sex marriage 15 to 17 times. It's been voted down 2-1. The Parliament has had its say numerous times, and yet this lobby, this same-sex marriage lobby, it's very aggressive. It keeps coming back, and it keeps demonising anyone who doesn't agree with its view of marriage. If it's Cooper's beer, they'll smash your beer bottles in the street. They'll go after people like IBM executives and Macquarie University academics. They'll go after people like Archbishop Julian Porteous, and they'll demonise anyone who doesn't support their agenda. So it's a very it's a lobby that holds a gun to the head of people who don't support it, and it's trying to legislate this by fatigue. The Parliament's dealt with this lots and lots of times. I think it's right now that this goes to the Australian people and let them prove whether or not they have the support of the Australian people. It doesn't have to come back to Parliament. If the Australian people say, no, we don't support this change, we want to preserve our freedoms, we want to preserve our gender norms. But if you use that argument that you put forward there, Lyle Shelton, doesn't that mean that once something is resolved, then it cannot be revisited? Don't things evolve over time? Societies evolve, people evolve, and so Parliament can vote on these issues again as attitudes evolve. And Margaret Mayman wants to make a point here, so I might just bring her in as well. Well, if we just respond to that, Joe, I think obviously in a democracy anything can be brought back and any idea can be tested in the democratic process. But this has been tested in the Parliament on numerous occasions, 15 to 17 times. There's been numerous parliamentary inquiries. None of them have recommended redefining marriage. And I think that's why we've ended up in this situation with a plebiscite. So let the people decide and let them have their say. Margaret?
Yeah, well, I think over and over again through history, people have persisted in changing our understandings of things. I think about William Wilberforce going back to the British Parliament time and time again to end slavery, with Christians on both sides of that argument. Arguments about the role of women in society have been... the conversations have to go on and until we get to the point where we understand human rights and human values and human integrity for everybody. So people are not going to stop this. It's not because of a rigid lobby group. It's because people are passionate about being present at the celebrations of the people that they love. They don't want them to have to go overseas to get married, and ageing grandparents are not well enough to go. It costs a huge amount of money. This is same-sex marriage equality is happening across the world. Australia needs to be part of that. We need to keep our families and friends close to us and enjoy these wonderful celebrations that marriage will enable, and it will happen. OK, I'm sure we'll hear much more about this over the coming months and years. Margaret Mayman in Sydney and Lyle Shelton in Canberra, thanks so much for joining us this morning. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Margaret. Thank you.